Okay, I am on page 2 of your spiral notebook. I would like you to title this page Expectations for Lab Design. All right, because as I told you, we were going to be doing some student designed labs this year, so starting next week, you guys are going to be working to create some of your own labs. So when you're writing a lab, what is it that I expect to see in your lab notebook? And of course, when you're designing a lab, we're going to do it in this notebook. So that's why I'm having you take these notes in your spiral so that you have them to reference while you're trying to do this in your graph paper notebook. All right, so the very first thing that I want you to have is a purpose. Okay? A purpose statement is the question you are trying to answer or the problem you are trying to solve. So in other words, you give me a statement to begin with that just tells me, hey, why are you doing this lab? What's the point? You're either trying to answer a question or solve a problem, typically. Sometimes you're just investigating something, so that would be something you could put there as well. So today we're investigating chemical and physical properties of a interaction between these things, okay? All right? The second thing that I would ask you to have is a materials list. Okay? And this is going to be a bulleted list where you're going to list chemicals that you will need, equipment that you will need, any glassware that you would need, and then also any other supplies, like for example, a Ziploc baggie or maybe some damp rid from Home Depot, okay? So a materials list, and you're gonna do it just like I did here. You're gonna number it. You can make it multiple columns, so if you need lots of materials, you can kind of divide it into 2 or 3 columns, depending on how much space you have on your paper. Okay, so purpose followed by materials. After your materials list is when you are going to begin your procedures. Okay? And this should be a step-by-step list. So it should be number 1, step-by-step list. It should be extremely detailed and specific. Okay? These are the things that we went over the other day when we did our robot sandwiches. Remember, we want a nice, clear, step-by-step list, very detailed, very specific to what you're doing, okay? And then after your procedures would come your data table. So this is your place to collect data, all right? You're going to use a ruler. So we have nice straight edges. It's got to have a title. Your rows and columns should be labeled. Okay. Remember, when you're recording your data that's recorded should be as precise as the tool will allow. And your data should all have units so that we know what magnitude we are measuring. All right? So after your data table, we are going to have a section for analysis. This is where you would do
questions that Ms. Crane asked you. So sometimes I will give you some questions to go with your lab. This is where you would answer those questions. Some labs are going to involve calculations. So this would be where you do your calculations.
Okay, so analysis section is where we answer questions and go through calculations. And then the very last thing you're going to need is a conclusion paragraph. This is a paragraph that tells the following. Number one, did you answer your question or solve the problem? So remember, way back up at the purpose statement, we had a question we were trying to answer or a problem that we were trying to solve. I also told you it could be an investigation of sort of what's going to happen. So down here, after you've done the lab, this is where you're going to tell me, did you answer your question? Did you solve the problem? What did you find out?
The second thing you're going to tell me here is any error that may have occurred.
And almost every experiment has some kind of error. There's almost always a certain amount of user error, things like that. Okay, so you should always have those two things in your conclusion. Did you answer your question and solve the problem? What did you learn? And then any error that you had during the experiment. Okay, so this is what I will expect to see in your notebook, in your lab notebook, anytime I ask you to write a procedure for a lab. This is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for purpose, materials, procedure, data tables, analysis, and conclusion.